I stood on the front steps of my family home, holding a single duffel bag, while my brother Terrence held the door halfway open, like I might contaminate the house if I stepped back inside. Rain soaked through my jacket, cold October rain that felt like needles on my skin. "You're not one of us anymore," Terrence said, his voice flat and final. My mother appeared behind him, arms crossed, her face a mask of disappointment I'd seen 1,000 times before, but never quite like this. "You embarrassed this family, Raymond. Your father built a name in this community, and you destroyed it with your recklessness." I tried to explain again about the embezzlement, about how my business partner had fled with everything, but she held up her hand. "We don't want excuses." "I need a place to stay," I said quietly, "just for a few weeks while I figure things out." Terrence laughed, actually laughed. "You're a leech, Raymond. You always have been. Dad bailed you out how many times? Now you want us to clean up your mess?" He stepped back and started closing the door. "Good luck out there." The door shut with a soft click that sounded louder than a slam. I stood there for another minute, the rain mixing with something wet on my face that I refused to acknowledge as tears. Then I picked up my bag and walked to my 15-year-old Honda, parked at the curb. My family home disappeared in the rearview mirror. 3 months earlier, I'd been sitting in my office at Callaway Digital Solutions, watching my entire world collapse in real time. My business partner, Marcus Vance, had cleaned out our accounts overnight. Every penny, the business we'd built over 8 years, gone. I discovered it when our biggest client's payment bounced, when the landlord called about unpaid rent, when I logged into our bank account and saw zeros where there should have been 6 figures. Marcus had been my college roommate, my best man at my wedding before the divorce, the person I trusted most in the world. He'd left a note on his desk. "Sorry, had to take care of my family first." Like I wasn't family after 8 years of partnership. Like I hadn't covered for him during his divorce, his drinking problem, his mistakes. The police said it would take months to track him down, if they ever did. He'd planned this carefully, moving money through shell companies, setting up accounts in the Cayman Islands. Meanwhile, I had payroll due, rent due, vendor invoices stacking up. Our client started pulling contracts when word got out. I filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy within 2 weeks, tried to reorganize, to save something. But the damage was too deep. Liquidation was the only option. I sold everything. Office equipment, client lists, even my car to buy the cheaper Honda. Paid what I could to creditors, and ended up with nothing except debt and a reputation as a failed businessman in a town where reputation was everything. The lawyer's office smelled like old books and expensive coffee. I'd come here on a referral from my bankruptcy attorney, someone who'd mentioned in passing that I might have a case. The woman sitting across from me, Nadine Whitmore, was in her 50s with silver hair and the kind of sharp eyes that missed nothing. She'd been reviewing my files for the past hour while I sat in uncomfortable silence. "This is interesting," she finally said, tapping a folder. "Your largest client, Hexagon Technologies. You signed an NDA and a non-compete when you took their contract, correct?" I nodded. "They violated that contract multiple times, took your proprietary software designs and used them without payment after your company collapsed. That's breach of contract and intellectual property theft." My heart started beating faster. "How much are we talking about?" Nadine leaned back in her leather chair. "If we can prove damages and willful infringement, potentially millions, maybe more. But Raymond, this will take time. 18 months, maybe 2 years. These corporate cases move slowly. Can you be patient?" I thought about the bankruptcy, the shame, my family's rejection. "I can be patient." Nadine smiled slightly. "Good, I'll take this on contingency. 40% of whatever we win. But you need to stay quiet about this. No social media posts, no telling family, no celebrating before the check clears. Can you do that?" I thought about Terrence's face, my mother's disappointment. "I can stay very quiet," I said. We shook hands. She couldn't have known that silence would become my greatest weapon. The family intervention happened 2 weeks after they'd thrown me out. My sister Claudette called, her voice dripping with false concern. "We want to help you, Ray. Come to dinner Sunday, just family. We need to talk about your situation." I should have known better, but some stupid part of me hoped they'd actually softened. The house was full when I arrived. Not just immediate family, but aunts, uncles, cousins. They'd turned my bankruptcy into a family spectacle. We sat in the dining room where I'd eaten 1,000 meals growing up, and my mother started the meeting like she was chairing a board. "Raymond, we've gathered here because we love you, but we need to address some concerns." For an hour, they took turns. My uncle called me irresponsible. My aunt suggested I'd always been too proud. Terrence said I'd let ego drive my business into the ground. Claudette cried about how embarrassed she was when her friends asked about me. My mother's final statement cut deepest. "Your father would be ashamed of the man you've become." I sat there absorbing it all, my hands folded on the table. Not once did anyone ask how I was doing. Not once did anyone ask if I needed emotional support. It was all about how my failure affected them. "We need you to understand," my mother continued, "that we can't be dragged down by your poor choices. You're on your own until you prove you can be responsible." I nodded slowly and decided right then that they would never know about Nadine, about the case, about anything. They'd made their choice. I'd make mine. 3 months later, I was desperate enough to ask Terrence if I could stay in his spare room for a while. I'd been living in weekly motels, burning through the little money I'd saved. My credit cards were maxed. I was working 2 part-time jobs, one at a grocery store stocking shelves at night, another doing data entry from a library computer. "I guess," Terrence said when I called, his reluctance clear, "but just until you get on your feet, we have standards to maintain." His wife Portia made sure I knew I was an imposition from day one. I could sleep on the fold-out couch in the basement room. I could use the bathroom, but had to clean it immediately after. I couldn't eat their food unless I replaced it with my own money. I lasted 6 weeks. Then Terrence called me at work. "We need the room back. Portia's nephew is moving in for college. You'll have to find somewhere else." I felt my stomach drop. "When?" Terrence sighed. "This weekend. Sorry, but family comes first." The irony of that statement wasn't lost on me. I was family. I just didn't count anymore. That Saturday, I packed my duffel bag again. Terrence was at a golf tournament. Portia handed me $40. "For gas," she said, like it was generous. Neither of them offered to help me move or drive me anywhere. I called a cab to take me to the cheapest motel I could find. That night, lying on a bed that smelled like cigarette smoke and broken dreams, I checked my email. Nadine had sent an update. "Discovery phase looks promising. Stay strong." My Uncle Bernard's funeral happened in December. I almost didn't go, but he'd been kind to me when I was a kid. Taught me to fish, to play chess, to appreciate quiet moments. I wore the only suit I owned, borrowed $20 from a coworker for gas, and drove to the service. The family gathered in clusters at the reception hall after the burial. I approached my mother, thinking grief might have softened her. She saw me coming and turned to the woman beside her. "This is Raymond," she said to the stranger, her voice cool. "He's a distant cousin, on my husband's side." The words hung in the air. A distant cousin. Not her son, not Bernard's nephew. Just some vague relative she was obligated to acknowledge. The woman shook my hand politely, oblivious to the devastation that simple phrase had caused. I excused myself and walked to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and pressed my palms against my eyes until the urge to scream passed. When I came out, I saw them all together. My mother, my siblings, my aunts and uncles, laughing about something. A family unit I'd been erased from. I left without saying goodbye to anyone. Drove to a truck stop off the interstate and sat in my car in the parking lot, hands shaking on the steering wheel. That's when the anger transformed into something else, something cold and patient. They'd made their decision about who I was. Fine. I'd let them live with that decision. And when the truth came out, they'd have to live with that too. The breakdown happened 2 weeks after the funeral. I'd been holding it together through sheer stubbornness, working 60-hour weeks between my 2 jobs, sleeping in my car some nights to save motel money. But something about the holidays approaching, about seeing families everywhere, about knowing mine had erased me, cracked something inside. I was parked at a truck stop in the middle of nowhere, eating a gas station sandwich for dinner when it hit me. The loneliness, the shame, the exhaustion. I put my head down on the steering wheel and sobbed. Not quiet tears, but ugly, choking sobs that made my whole body shake. A trucker knocked on my window, concerned, but I waved him off. My phone rang while I was still crying. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Raymond Calloway? Nadine's voice. I have news. I wiped my face with my sleeve, tried to sound normal. What is it? Her voice was excited, controlled excitement that lawyers get when they smell victory. Preliminary approval just came through. The judge agrees we have a case. We're moving to settlement negotiations. I sat up straighter. What does that mean? Nadine paused. It means Hexagon knows they're going to lose. They want to settle out of court. We're talking serious money here, Raymond. 8 figures if we play this right, but it'll still take time. 6 months minimum. I looked around the truck stop parking lot, at my beat-up Honda, at my reflection in the rearview mirror. 8 figures. I can wait, I said. Good, Nadine replied. Now stay quiet and let me work. Nadine's warning was clear when we met the next week. This is where people mess up, she said, leaning forward across her desk. They get excited, they tell family, they start spending money they don't have yet. Don't do that. Hexagon's lawyers will look for any reason to claim you're not actually damaged, that you're doing fine. Stay low, stay quiet. I nodded. What about my family? Nadine raised an eyebrow. What about them? I explained. The situation, the rejection, the humiliation. She listened without interrupting, her expression neutral. When I finished, she sat back. Here's my advice, and I'm giving this as someone who's seen a lot of families destroy themselves over money. Don't tell them, not until the check clears and the funds are in your account. They'll find out eventually, I said. Nadine smiled, something sharp and knowing. Yes, but by then you'll be in control. You'll decide when and how they know. Right now, they have all the power. They've defined you as a failure. Let them keep thinking that. Let them underestimate you. It's the greatest advantage you can have. I thought about my mother calling me a distant cousin, about Terrence laughing at me, about being told I wasn't family anymore. This will be a silent climb, I said. Nadine nodded approvingly. The best kind, strategic, patient, and when you reach the top, you won't owe them a single explanation. We shook hands again. I walked out of her office feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. I needed cash for rent, so I took my watch to a pawn shop on the east side of town. The watch had been my father's, a Rolex he'd given me when I graduated college. It was probably the most valuable thing I owned. The shop was cramped and dusty, run by an older man named Calvin who looked like he'd seen every type of desperation walk through his door. He examined the watch carefully, tested it, checked the serial number. I can give you $2,000, he said. The watch was worth at least $5,000. That's robbery, I said quietly. Calvin looked at me, really looked. You military? I shook my head. Businessman. Former businessman. He nodded slowly. I'll tell you what, $3,000, and that's because I recognize something in you. He pushed the cash across the counter. Some people rise when others bet against them. You've got that look, don't prove me wrong. I took the money, surprised. Why did you do that? Calvin smiled. Because 30 years ago, I was in your shoes. Broke, desperate, family turned their backs. An old man gave me a break when I needed it, told me to pay it forward someday. He handed me the receipt. Come back when you're back on your feet. I'll sell this back to you for what you paid. I left that pawn shop with something worth more than the extra $1,000. I left with the knowledge that kindness still existed. My mother's birthday party happened in March. I wasn't invited. I found out about it when I saw the photos on social media. Everyone gathered at Terrence's house, but I drove by anyway, telling myself I was just in the neighborhood. That was a lie. I wanted to see them, to remind myself why I was staying silent. I parked down the street and walked up to the house. The front door was open, people coming and going. I slipped in, just another guest in the crowd. Made my way to the kitchen to get water. That's when I heard them. Claudette and my mother standing by the sink talking. Have you heard from Raymond? Claudette asked. My mother laughed, actually laughed. God, no. He's probably cleaning bathrooms somewhere, too proud to tell us he's working at a car wash. Terrence joined them. I saw his car last week, total piece of junk. I almost felt bad for him. Claudette lowered her voice. Do you think we were too harsh? My mother's response was immediate. Absolutely not. He made his choices. He needs to learn consequences. I stood there frozen, holding an empty cup, listening to my own family mock my suffering. A cousin I barely knew spotted me, opened her mouth to say hello. I shook my head, put a finger to my lips, and quietly left through the side door. Drove back to my motel room, sat on the bed, in the dark, and felt the last remaining piece of love for them die. Nadine was right. They'd made me a stranger. I'd treat them like strangers when the time came. The message came late at night, unexpected. A Facebook message from my nephew, Terrence's son Jerome. He was 17, a good kid I'd always liked. "Uncle Ray, are you okay? Dad said you're going through stuff. Just wanted to check in." I stared at the message for a long time, surprised that someone in the family actually cared. I typed carefully, "I'm okay, Jerome. Life's been tough, but I'm working through it." He responded immediately, "Dad and Grandma talk about you sometimes. It doesn't sound nice. I don't believe everything they say." That statement hit me harder than I expected. "Why not?" I asked. Jerome's response came slowly, like he was choosing words carefully. "Because you were always nice to me. You came to my games when Dad was too busy. You helped me with my college essay. People don't stop being good just because they hit hard times." I felt my throat tighten. "Thanks, Jerome. That means a lot." We talked for another hour about his college plans, his girlfriend, his dreams. I gave vague, hopeful advice, told him to work hard, to be patient, to not let anyone define him. Before we ended the conversation, I typed one more thing. "Don't always believe what adults say about someone. Sometimes people need someone fallen to stay fallen so they feel better about themselves." Jerome replied with a thumbs up. That conversation was the only kindness I'd received from family in 6 months. I thought about telling him everything about Nadine and the case, but I didn't. He didn't need that burden, and I didn't need the secret getting out. The settlement negotiations were progressing well, Nadine reported in April. "We're close. They've offered 7 figures, but I think we can push for more. Be patient." I was patient. And with the advance she'd given me against the settlement, I rented a tiny apartment on the outskirts of town. Nothing fancy, just a studio in an old building that had seen better days. But it was mine. I paid the first 6 months up front in cash, which surprised the landlord, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen. "You in trouble?" she asked bluntly. I shook my head. "No, ma'am. Just trying to rebuild." She studied me with sharp eyes. "Okay, but I run a quiet building. You make trouble, you're out." I didn't make trouble. I kept to myself, worked my jobs, came home exhausted every night. But something changed. I started helping around the building, fixed a leaky pipe in the hallway, repaired a broken lock on Mrs. Chen's storage unit, helped an elderly neighbor carry groceries. Small things that didn't cost money but cost time. Mrs. Chen noticed. "You're handy," she said one day. "Building needs a lot of work. Can't afford contractors. You interested in rent reduction if you help?" I was interested. We worked out a deal. I'd handle minor repairs and maintenance. She'd cut my rent in half. It gave me something to do besides work and wait. It gave me purpose. And slowly, quietly, I started rebuilding something else, my sense of worth. The family had made me feel worthless. These strangers, they made me feel useful. The contrast wasn't lost on me. The call came on a Tuesday in July. I was replacing light fixtures in the apartment building hallway when my phone rang. "Nadine. Raymond, we have an agreement. The settlement is approved. $8 million. I nearly dropped the light fixture. $8 million. My hands started shaking. "When?" Nadine's voice was calm, professional. 30 days for the check to clear and funds to transfer. "But Raymond, this is real. You did it. You won." I sat down on the floor in the hallway, light fixture forgotten. $8 million. After taxes and Nadine's 40%, I'd clear roughly $4.5 million. More money than I'd ever imagined having. "What do I do now?" Nadine chuckled. "That's up to you. My advice? Don't change anything yet. Keep your old phone. Keep your cheap car. Keep your apartment. Let the money settle in your account. Then make smart, strategic decisions." I thought about my family, about my mother's birthday party, about being called a distant cousin. "I think I know exactly what to do," I said. Nadine was quiet for a moment. "Remember, Raymond, revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes the quietest moves are the most devastating." I smiled. "I'm learning that." I hung up and sat in that hallway for another 20 minutes, just breathing. Mrs. Chen found me there. "You okay?" I nodded. Yeah, I just got some good news. She patted my shoulder. Good, you deserve it. Now finish those lights before someone trips and sues me. I finished the lights, went back to my apartment, and started planning. 2 weeks later, my sister Claudette called. Her number showed up on my phone, the first time she'd contacted me in nearly a year. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Ray, she said, her voice shaking, I need to talk to you. She was crying, real tears, not the performative kind she'd shed at the intervention. What's wrong? It's Byron. He lost his job. We're drowning in debt. The mortgage is 3 months behind. I didn't know who else to call. She sobbed. I know we haven't been there for you. I know we've been terrible. But I'm desperate, Ray. I need help. Just a loan. $5,000. I'll pay you back. I sat in my apartment, looking at my bank account that now showed millions, and felt absolutely nothing. Claudette, I'm barely getting by myself, I said, keeping my voice concerned. I'm living in a studio apartment, working 2 jobs. I don't have $5,000. She cried harder. Please, anything, I'm begging you. I thought about the intervention, about the mocking at the birthday party. I can send you $50, I said. It's all I can spare right now. Silence on the line. Then her voice changed, became cold. $50? That's it? I kept my tone apologetic. I'm sorry. That's all I have. She hung up without another word. That night, I wrote a check for $50 and mailed it to her. The same amount she'd once tossed on a table in front of me when I was homeless, calling it charity. She'd called me petty back then for being hurt by it. Now she'd understand exactly how petty it felt. The money cleared into my accounts in August, transferred from Hexagon Technologies through Nadine's firm. $4.6 million after all fees and taxes. I stared at the number on my laptop screen for a full hour, unable to process it. Then I got to work. I called a financial advisor Nadine recommended, a sharp woman named Teresa, who specialized in quiet wealth management. I want to invest, I told her, but I want to stay invisible. Teresa understood immediately. We'll set up a trust, multiple LLCs. You'll invest through proxies and shell companies. No one will connect the dots back to you unless you want them to. Over the next month, we created a structure that made me a ghost. I started investing in small local businesses. A bakery that needed equipment, a mechanic shop that needed expansion capital, a bookstore that was struggling. Nothing flashy, nothing that would draw attention. But each investment returned profit, and I reinvested. Teresa also did something interesting. Your family's favorite restaurant? The one your mother always talks about on social media? I nodded. Giovanni's. She goes there every Sunday after church. Teresa smiled. They're selling shares to private investors. Want in? I bought 20% of Giovanni's through a holding company with a meaningless name. My mother would continue eating there, never knowing I owned part of it. The irony was delicious. What else? I asked Teresa. She pulled up more opportunities. There's a struggling furniture company your brother's construction firm uses. We could acquire it. I thought about Terrence. Let's do it. An old business colleague, Pierce Hamilton, invited me to a charity gala in September. We'd stayed in touch after my bankruptcy, one of the few who hadn't ghosted me. Come as my +1, he said. It'll be good for you to get out. I almost said no, then Pierce added, your family will probably be there. They usually are. That decided it. I went shopping for the first time since the settlement. Bought a good suit. Nothing too expensive. Got a haircut. Teresa had registered me with several investment groups, and one of them had been invited to the gala as a sponsor. You're listed as a silent investor under Northwood Holdings LLC, she explained. No one will connect it to you. The gala was held at the city's nicest hotel. I arrived alone, checked in under my LLC name, and walked into a ballroom full of wealth and influence. And there they were. My mother, Terrence, Claudette, all dressed up, mingling with the kind of people they thought mattered. I kept my distance, watched them work the room. An organizer approached me. Mr. Calloway, thank you for Northwood's generous donation. Would you like to say a few words about your investment philosophy? I declined politely, stayed in the background, watched my mother laugh with people she thought were important. She walked right past me twice, didn't even glance my way. I was invisible to her again, but this time by choice. Terrence gave a speech about community development, talked about family values and helping those less fortunate. I stood in the back and felt nothing but cold amusement. The irony of him talking about helping people while I stood there, secretly funding half the initiatives he claimed to care about. Teresa called me in October with an interesting opportunity. There's a property going into foreclosure. Might interest you. She sent me the address. My hands went cold when I recognized it. Terrence's house. The same house where I'd lived in the basement, where I'd been kicked out for Portia's nephew. They're that far underwater? I asked. Apparently, your brother overextended on some construction deals that fell through. The bank's about to foreclose, but there's a way to buy the mortgage through a holding company before it goes to auction. Teresa paused. It would give you leverage. You'd own his debt. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Do it. Teresa handled everything quietly. Within 2 weeks, Northwood Holdings LLC owned Terrence's mortgage through a subsidiary. He had no idea. I didn't call the loan, didn't evict him. I just waited. Let him keep living there, keep making payments to a faceless corporation, never knowing I was watching. Teresa sent me the payment records each month. Every time Terrence made a payment, I knew. Every time he was late, I knew. It was the quietest power I'd ever held. What's the play here? Teresa asked. I watched rain streak down my apartment window. I'd kept the apartment, even though I could afford anything, kept my old phone, my cheap car, my simple life. No play yet, I said. I'm just positioning pieces on the board. The game comes later. Terrence's construction business collapsed in November. I heard about it through Pierce, who heard it through the business community grapevine. Your brother's company went under, Pierce told me over coffee. Some deal went south. He's liquidating. I felt a flash of something, not quite satisfaction, but close. A week later, Terrence called me. My brother, calling me for the first time in over a year. Ray, he said, his voice strained. I heard you've been doing better, working steady. I'd let that rumor slip through Pierce, a strategic bit of misdirection. I'm getting by, I said carefully. Terrence cleared his throat. Look, I know things have been rough between us, but I'm in a bind, lost my business. I need work. Any work. You know people, right? From your old business? I let silence hang on the line, let him squirm. What kind of work are you looking for? Terrence's voice was desperate. Anything. Construction management, project oversight, I'm qualified for a lot. I made a show of thinking. There's a warehouse that's hiring, loading docks, inventory management. It's not glamorous, but it's steady. More silence. Then Terrence's voice, tight with anger and humiliation. Loading docks? Ray, I ran a $6 million construction company. I kept my tone helpful. I understand, but it's what I know about. They pay $15 an hour. Benefits after 90 days. I can put in a good word if you want. The insult landed exactly as I'd intended. Terrence had once told me I'd end up working warehouses. Now I was offering him the same. He hung up without answering. I sat in my apartment and smiled. The legal envelope arrived at Claudette's house in December, delivered by a process server. I knew because Teresa called me when it was done. The papers have been served. Your sister now knows the childhood home is under new ownership. I'd bought it at a tax sale 3 months earlier. My mother had fallen behind on property taxes after my father died, something I'd discovered through public records. The house where I'd grown up, where I'd been thrown out, where I'd been called a leech, now mine. Claudette called within an hour, screaming, "What did you do? How did you—" "We're being evicted from Mom's house." I kept my voice calm. "I'm sorry, what?" She was crying and yelling simultaneously. "Some company bought the tax lien. They're taking the house. Mom has 60 days to vacate." I made sympathetic noises. "That's terrible. Have you tried calling the company? Maybe they'll work out a payment plan." Claudette sobbed. "We tried. They won't even talk to us. It's all automated emails and legal notices." I suggested she contact a lawyer, knowing it wouldn't help. The sale was legal, properly documented, final. "I'm sure it'll work out," I said. Claudette's voice turned accusatory. "You don't even care, do you? This is our childhood home." I thought about being called a distant cousin at Uncle Bernard's funeral. "Of course I care, Claudette, but I can barely pay my own rent. I can't help with something like this." She hung up on me. I sat in my apartment, looking at the ownership papers Teresa had sent me. My childhood home, my property, my decision what happened next. The family meeting was called for the week before Christmas. Terrence sent a group text to everyone, including me for the first time in months. Family emergency. Everyone needs to be there. Sunday at 2 p.m., Mom's house. I showed up exactly on time, driving my old Honda, wearing regular clothes. They were all there, sitting in the living room of the house I now owned. My mother looked older, smaller. Terrence looked angry. Claudette looked scared. Various aunts, uncles, cousins filled the other seats. They all turned to look at me when I walked in. "Raymond," my mother said, her voice shaking. "We need answers. Do you know anything about this company that bought the house?" I sat in the chair furthest from everyone. "I don't know anything about real estate companies, Mom." Terrence leaned forward. "This is suspicious. It all happened right after your bankruptcy was discharged. The timing seems too perfect." I met his eyes. "What are you suggesting?" He didn't back down. "I'm suggesting maybe you're involved somehow. Maybe this is revenge." The room went silent. I stood up slowly, looked around at all of them. Every face that had rejected me, mocked me, erased me. "You treated me like I was nothing," I said quietly. "You threw me out, called me a leech, introduced me as a distant cousin, laughed about me cleaning bathrooms. That's what I became to you. Nothing." I headed toward the door. "So I stayed quiet. I stayed invisible, just like you wanted." My mother's voice stopped me. "What does that mean?" I looked back. "It means you made your choices. Now you get to live with them, just like I had to." Over the next week, they each reached out separately. First Claudette, asking if I could help with rent since she had to find a new place. I told her I was sure she'd figure it out, the same words she'd said to me when I was homeless. Then Terrence, asking if I had connections for job opportunities. I suggested he try the warehouse I'd mentioned, reminded him they were still hiring. My mother called last, her voice small and broken. "Raymond, I know we failed you, but please, if you have any way to help with the house, any connections, anything." I listened to her beg, this woman who'd called me an embarrassment, who'd disowned me publicly. "Mom," I said gently, "I don't have those kinds of resources. I'm just getting back on my feet myself." She cried. Real tears. "I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go." I felt something twist in my chest, the last remaining piece of the son I used to be. "You'll figure it out," I said. "You're strong. You've always told me that." She sobbed harder. "Please don't abandon us like this. We're family." I almost laughed. Almost. "Family," I repeated. "That's interesting. When I needed family, where were you?" Silence on the line except for her crying. "I have to go, Mom. I hope everything works out for you." I hung up, sat in my apartment, and felt absolutely nothing except the cold satisfaction of balance finally being restored. I met with my attorney, a different one Teresa had recommended for estate planning. His name was Bernard, ironically the same as my dead uncle. "I want to update my will," I told him. He nodded, taking notes. "Current beneficiaries?" I shook my head. "No family. I want the bulk of my estate to go to education funds for low-income kids, scholarships, community programs." Bernard looked up. "That's very generous. What about family? Even a small amount?" I thought about it. "Yes, leave each of my family members $1. I want it documented that I remembered them. I just chose not to give them anything substantial." Bernard raised his eyebrows. "That's a very specific message." I smiled. "It's meant to be." We spent 2 hours going through everything. Setting up trusts, designating nonprofit organizations, creating scholarship funds in my father's name at community colleges. Money that would actually help people who needed it, not people who'd abandoned someone in need. "There's one more thing," I said. "I want to fund a program at the homeless shelter, specifically for people whose families turned their backs on them." Bernard wrote it down. "Personal experience?" I nodded. "Very personal." When we finished, I felt lighter. The money wasn't about accumulation anymore. It was about impact, about being the person I'd needed when I was at my lowest, about making sure other people didn't feel as alone as I'd felt. "Your family is going to be very surprised when they see this," Bernard said. I stood up. "That's the point." The article ran in the local business journal in February. Mystery investor emerges as major local philanthropist. The journalist had pieced together various donations and investments, tracked them back to Northwood Holdings, and discovered my name attached to the LLC. The article detailed the scholarship funds, the business investments, the community programs, listed the amounts, listed my story. Raymond Calloway, who filed for bankruptcy 3 years ago after business partner embezzlement, quietly received an 8-figure settlement from Hexagon Technologies. Since then, he's invested millions in local community development while living modestly in a studio apartment and working maintenance jobs. When asked about his approach, Calloway stated, "I remember what it's like to have nothing. I won't forget that." The article went viral locally. My phone exploded with messages from old colleagues, from people I'd helped through my anonymous investments, from strangers thanking me, and from my family. Terrence's text, "Is this real?" Claudette's, "Why didn't you tell us? My mother called 6 times. I didn't answer any of them." Pierce called instead. "You sneaky bastard," he said, laughing. "How long were you planning to keep this quiet?" I smiled, until the article forced my hand. Pierce paused. "Your family must be losing their minds." I looked at my phone, at the unanswered calls and messages. "Probably." Pierce was quiet for a moment. "You going to forgive them?" I thought about that question. Forgiveness. What did that even mean anymore? "No," I said finally. "But I'm not holding on to anger either. I'm just done. They made their choice. I made mine. We're even now." The voicemail came 3 days after the article. My mother's voice, broken and desperate. "Raymond, please call me back. We were wrong. We were so wrong. We didn't know. We didn't understand. Please, sweetheart, we're your family. We love you. Please don't shut us out. We made mistakes, but we can fix this. Please call me, please." I listened to it twice. Then I listened to the others. Terrence apologizing. Claudette begging for another chance. Cousins I barely knew suddenly wanting to reconnect. Aunts and uncles who'd mocked me now praising my success. All of them saying the same thing. "We didn't know." As if knowing I had money would have made their cruelty acceptable. I saved the messages, not to listen to again, but as evidence. Proof that their love was conditional. That their family bonds came with price tags. That I'd been right to keep my silence. Then I blocked their numbers. Not out of anger, not out of spite, just out of finality. They'd had their chance to be family when it cost them something. They'd chosen not to pay that price. I deleted my mother's voicemail last. Listened to her voice breaking, begging, promising things she couldn't deliver, and I felt nothing except the quiet peace of a door closing on a chapter of my life that had caused me nothing but pain. Some people didn't deserve second chances, not because they were evil, but because they'd proven who they were when tested. And I believed them. I'm writing this from the porch of the small house I bought last month. Not a mansion, just a quiet place on 5 acres outside the city. Duke, the rescue dog I adopted, is sleeping at my feet. The sunset is painting the sky orange and gold, and for the first time in 3 years I feel completely at peace. The settlement money changed my life, but not in the way my family would think. It didn't make me rich, it made me free. Free from needing their approval. Free from their definition of success. Free from the shame they'd tried to burden me with. I invest quietly. I give generously. I live simply. And I'm happier than I've ever been. Sometimes people ask if I regret how I handled things with my family. If I should have told them, should have shared, should have forgiven faster. I tell them the truth. My family taught me the most valuable lesson I've ever learned. They taught me that sometimes the people who should support you won't. Sometimes the people who should love you unconditionally will abandon you the moment you need them most. And they taught me that's okay. Because you don't need everyone to believe in you. You just need you to believe in you. You don't need their applause when you win. You don't need their presence when you rise. You just need patience, strategy, and the quiet confidence that comes from proving yourself to yourself. Sometimes they don't clap when you win. Sometimes they don't even show up. So win anyway. Do it with grace. Do it with dignity. Do it in silence if you have to. Because revenge doesn't need noise. It just needs patience. And the satisfaction of knowing you rebuilt yourself into someone they can't tear down anymore. That's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything.